Okay, I'm going to whiz through this because it's getting late and getting tired. So just a quick overview of some general drivers and communications work that we've done over the last year. So there's been general maintenance going on, but I won't go into any of the details, or many of the details. Some meta server improvements. The Modbus server that Doug mentioned earlier. A couple of drivers and some work on OPC for MacroView. So on meta server we've added a bulk entity get value support to the API so that you can, in one C# or VB line, ask for a series of an array of entity attributes and get them back in one call. Sometimes you just want to do that rather than create objects and all that sort of thing. Ability to specify macrodir as part of the login. Some failure handling reporting if configuration is wrong on the server. The NGunits functionality flowed through from the other MacroView changes. So meta server links to the core metascript and data libraries of MacroView. Any changes in those just needs a recompile and meta server gets that functionality. VNC logon startup support, as I mentioned before, and the ability to remote script execution. So if you've the beauty of meta server is it's got one port. The port can be changed, but now we can start VNC through that port, and we can do remote execution through that port, all with authenticated access.
With the log files for that, can you add in the IP of the user that's actually logged in and out?
Yeah, in fact, it's not in the list, but part of the new functionality is all the meta server login actually sends back the machine name, the username, as part of the login process. It's not used currently, but the information's there in meta server. And we could extend it to explicitly log to a dbase file, but it was added primarily for things like CSPP's currently Java VNC web browser functionality that uses the Windows client to authenticate what applications a user can access within the MacroView server system. So we'll be using that extra information for that sort of stuff. Anonymous login support and a default server list. For say someone who's using an Excel spreadsheet and they don't know what the machine names are, the abbreviations or whatever, you can put on a meta server a database that lists all the server names, a description of it, and that can be used to populate a combo box in future revisions of the Excel add-in or even any of the other ADO.NET based stuff. Okay, Modbus server basically makes a MacroView system look like a sub-network of Modbus PLCs. It attaches itself to a specified PLC model driver shared memory. It's one Modbus server instance per shared memory image. So if you had 3 shared memory images, you'd have to have multiple Modbus servers attached to it. They can be configured to sit on different ports rather than the standard Modbus TCP port. Let me see. Got both TCP and RS-232. You'll have to run a separate Modbus server instance for every RS-232 line, but for TCP/IP you can run just one, and it'll fork and produce multiple processes per connection. There's a mapping between the protocol messages coming in and the local PLC data model. So if you had a local source or an existing Modbus model PLC shared memory structure, there's no mapping required. But if you say had an Allen Bradley PLC, which has a variety of different file types, there's command line based mapping. So you say, okay, I'll map this register type, map a holding register to this register type on this instance. Or with stations, the default is it takes the station name suffix, if it's a numerical address, say you have station 1, station 2, station 3, in one driver, it'll assume that's 1, 2 and 3 Modbus IDs. That's the default, so you don't have to specify anything else. But if you have multiple prefixes with different numeric suffix, you can put command line support to say, map this particular Modbus address, station address, to a particular station within any PLC model driver that's running on MacroView. It's built on the MacroView serialization library. It's the same technology used in MetaServer, the PCC driver, Squared E driver, and the VNC. It's a general purpose library. That's just internal technical details, but I find it interesting. We did some work, as Doug mentioned. I'll skip through this because he already mentioned it. I was just quite chuffed in terms of support, as in solving a problem remotely with very little information by building a protocol emulator, then reproducing the problem based on what the customer information that they provided, and resolved it pretty quickly. MS-COM is a version of M-Shell that has RS-232 communication ability. So there's some extensions within the language that allows you to read a line from a serial port, read a individual character, or write a string to the serial port.
And Brett, that's what you're using in your...
Well, I didn't really talk about it, but those alarms that I showed you in my demo, the Seco 101, there's a series of tenant panels at Sydney markets, and there's actually security systems that will dial up a phone number, and I had a little DTMF decoder which came back in serial, and that's what I used MS-COM for. Oh, really? So I actually had incoming alarms from 30 different panels, security panels around this site, and so that was separate to my paging system, but that's what I used MS-COM for, and it works great. Our application, our C++ application, does all the writing to the GSM mode.
And that's working fine?
It hasn't failed once. Perfect, ever since I set it up.
So the purpose of this is not for a general purpose driver replacement. It's just when you've got something, you don't want to spend too much time on it. Within M-Shell, you've got access to all the databases, all the entity values, and so you can do a quick integration task. And we can extend that if need be in the future to include TCP support, and have an equivalent M-Shell sitting there or talking to... What are you laughing at, Tony?
Get them through a program, don't do M-Shell.
Okay. Squared Ethernet driver. This is a rewrite of the original driver. I don't know how many years ago it was written. Many. And it was just too difficult to do any porting, because it was tied to specifically the SCO operating system and the kernel level of it, which meant that even between SCO versions there are compatibility issues. And then don't even talk about the cross-platform question. So together with Aluka, we basically started from scratch using the MacroView serialization library I mentioned. And the interesting thing about this driver, it doesn't use TCP, it uses the actual lowest layer of Ethernet. And so in the debugging output you got on the right, you can't see it properly, but there's the source MAC address and the destination MAC address, which is the very lowest layer of the Ethernet communications. And so this driver builds up the requests and sends it to the Squared E PLC. And there's a bit of protocol interaction. So all the TCP stuff is at a different layer, and we can't leverage it in this case. It was pretty tough to get protocol documentation. I tried a few times, but obviously I wasn't pushy enough, and Mark helped me out there and got the protocol documentation. It uses a library called PCAP, which allows you... It's actually used in protocol sniffers to listen in on network communications, but in addition to be able to read from the very lowest layer of a network card, you can also write back a raw packet, and that was used to implement the communication aspect of it. It doesn't require a kernel level driver, it just needs to be run as root, because it's effectively doing packet sniffing, except just it's sniffing for Squared E packets. We're supporting a Squared E Ethernet driver on Linux and Windows, but it can be practically supported on any MacroView platform that has a PCAP library.
SCO doesn't.
It does, but...
No, it doesn't.
It does, but really, you've got open source software, which is great, but it's moving on. It's moving on technically, and they're not updating the SCO side of things. So it's a lot of work to keep up with it. Not getting the benefit of developers around the world working on it. It's asynchronous, very fast. Probably, even with an old SquareD PLC, you've probably got the fastest responses when you pushed it, set it to the maximum settings. But then, as I mentioned earlier, on a particular Cymax 400 Ethernet PLC, it got the PLC in the state, and through the packet sniffing, came to the conclusion it was the PLC that was the problem, not the driver. Okay. MacroView OPC. We're doing some work for CSBP to link MacroView Linux and Unix systems to devices that only have an OPC driver. Now, OPC runs on Windows, so we have to use a gateway style approach. And again, we're leveraging the metaserver protocol. So on the Windows machine, you've got the OPC interface, the DA server, is it data access or data acquisition? I can never remember. And above that, we've written an OPC metaserver. And so if you can imagine, metaserver as it stands currently connects to the MacroView libraries. The OPC metaserver provides the same facade or interface to the rest of the world, but below it is the OPC interface. So you can connect, you could even connect through the Excel add-in to this OPC metaserver without MacroView involved at all, and query for tag items, but not history, just at current values. But the point of it is that we're leveraging that reusable layer in this scenario as well. And so we've got an OPC metaserver running on a Windows machine, and on the Unix side of things, there's going to be, or there is, a driver called meta image, and that is a sorted image driver that queries a metaserver, whether it's an OPC metaserver or a standard metaserver, and asks for real-time values to update the shared memory on the MacroView system. So the MacroView system could be either Unix, Linux, Windows. It could be on the same box in the case of a Windows machine, but it has to be on a separate box for a Unix or Linux machine. There is the potential to use virtual machine technology such as VMware to make it co-reside, but that's probably going a bit too complex in terms of setup and deployment. There's the prospective use of this to not have OPC involved at all, and just have a MacroView system where you have any driver, whether it's a PLC or sorted image driver, and on another MacroView system replicating that source. It will appear on the destination MacroView system as a sorted image driver and update live, etc. But on the source MacroView system, it can be any of the PLC drivers or the sorted image drivers.
So they could use it at Spectrum. No, they couldn't, but they could use it at Laminex if they wanted to get information from the dryer, the new dryer, from the old SquareD.
Yep.
SCO stuff into that. There would be another option to the Modbus server.
Yes, but it's replicating to another MacroView. The advantage of the Modbus server is that there's so many drivers available for the Modbus protocol.
Is that a little bit like GW client
Yes,
server?
yeah. But we're not doing this on purpose. There's a side effect of leveraging the same protocol in different areas because we need that anyway for the OPC replication of data. Okay, so I think I covered most of these. Side effects after this, we'll have like we have the ADO.NET library on .NET and Windows. The side effect of this will be a C++ library, which is the client side of the Metascript protocol, so we can develop more MacroView to MacroView type comms easily in the future. We're going to support dynamic read rate current value information and the alarm events. We're not supporting OPC history. I covered most of all this. Yep. Let me see. Okay. Let's just go through a demo. To give you a feel for it. Let me see.
This is for Brian McCuddy, so you realise that
We're making progress.
to develop this is actually.
Metricon, that's it. Okay, so we've got
Apple and Mel recently testing this on freeway.
Metricon's OPC Explorer, and that's a sample OPC data source. And what I've got a configuration set up. Actually, I don't think it makes a difference where it's run from. So I'm going to refresh my memory a bit because I've been doing so much preparation for this.
I think you developed this
because of the user group. So I'm going to start with my OPC meta server, and it needs the server name, which would be where the OPC. That's the problem with clients and servers. You've got clients and servers, depending on your context, which one are you using, and then you've got OPC versus meta server. So I'm specifying the OPC server location, which is at this machine, core 2. And, oops, no, sorry. See, I got confused. It's the server name, which is that. TSOPC source dot D sample. Not 40. I don't know why they didn't make a simple name for their demo thing. And then which machine it's on. And this is the sort of thing you'd start up in the automatic startup for the system. Okay, it's running, I believe. Just check. Yep. Okay, so I'll and now I'll run the meta image driver. Again, I've forgotten the syntax. That's right. I named the source OPC. And the host will be core 2. Now, this is not completed functionality, so we might be doing something else with the password, but for now I'm specifying the password on the command line. And I think that's basically it. So it's queried the OPC server, got a list of points from the server, and sized the shared memory to suit. So now, actually I should have just typed that in the first place. It's not the configuration. Standard configuration on this machine, so I have to specify it. I'm just specifying that so I can run ImageStat. And that's not right. That's the standard configuration. That's right, OPC config.
You're on the right machine.
Huh. Why would that not work?
That's usually our question for you.
Who are we actually talking to? Yeah.
I actually don't know why that would not work. Let me just try something else.
Everything I take back that money.
Okay. No, I have no idea why that's not working. So what I'm going to do is leave it. For the people who are going to hang around, I'm sure I'll fix it in a sec. And I'll email you an image of it working. But it's basically updating the sorted image shared memory from the OPC meta source. So, any questions? Or someone else can take questions while I wildly look at the possibilities.
Well, while Brian can close off, unless anyone else has anything else they want to talk about or discuss about the next 12 months, whether you want to talk about directions or any sort of thing that you'd really like to see in the next 12 months in terms of MacroView as a product.
The only thing I'd like to say, Doug, is just, as we were talking earlier, about trying to get away from the D-base.
Yeah, there's Aplon's been talking about using an object-oriented database called Matisse in future, but I sort of feel that it's one of those, we must take this sort of like step by step, and the database is actually a huge step to take, and it also means that you'll start going into, you'll have to pay for licenses for every machine. One of the, D-base is painful, but it's just a structure of a database file. As soon as you go to a more powerful database, you get a whole bunch more, but we're going to start. It's sort of ramping the product up to a next level of tier of stuff.
Do you want to mention CVD?
No, his problem is with DBase as a database, not as access to it. The way it handles time, the way it handles events, there's no commit rollback.
You know what was happening?
Handback.
All the times I did it before, I did it as a separate task. This was after all our demos. MetaServer was picking up the connection. It didn't actually specify a different port, so there was two MetaServers running on the machine: the standard MetaServer and the OPC one. And the meta image driver connected to that port, got the standard MetaServer, and that was all the entities.
Which is what you're saying you
Yeah.
can do as a market.
Right. So this is the sample of OPC source reading the information
So you have to
and
explain.
updating.
So Brian, this is actually OPC data inside Macro.
Yep.
No, Nick will be interested in that too, because that's where we're going with the sample.
Good. So I think he's the
CS3,
man.
yeah.
So what he was saying is you're actually pumping out of your tank to yourself and he's charging you for it.
Basically, he is.
It's a very flash car.
It is. It's a good model you can get.
So that was
Bring that along.
that's the
Charge me as well.
summary of the driver and communication work done in the last year. It's a lot of work, so it's been a busy year. But,
Yeah, the Cymex driver sucked up a huge amount of time.
yeah, it did.
Glad to hear it.
Sorry?
I'm glad to hear it.
So I'd like to thank everyone for their attention. I think it's been pretty
Yeah,
good.
very good.
Across the board, all the talks. I found it very
Brian's
interesting.
going to close off.
Okay.
Hi. What I will say will take about 3 minutes, if that. Thank you all, first of all, for coming. And really, this has probably been the most active and useful user group, because everybody's been contributing, and particularly in the breaks and the talks have been excellent. But this is the only way we're going to get this product and keep it driven the way it is. The actual amount of time we have come in the last 4 years in development is really tremendous. So I really have to thank Doug and Apollon in particular, and all of you in front of us for their ideas and input to get it to this point. So again, thank you. Please feel free to stay back and have a coffee or whatever's available and discuss as much as you would like. Thank you.